Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Michele. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Michele, I'm really excited for the conversation. But before we dive in, let's get to know you. Tell us a little bit about your career, work history, and all that fun stuff.
So I currently run marketing and communications for Foursquare. Many people probably know us from our origins on the consumer side of the house, but we've actually evolved into something that is more of a geospatial platform. So we figured out probably about 10 years ago that the technology that we were using for our consumer apps other businesses could use either for making marketing decisions or building their own great consumer experiences. If you used a rideshare, you probably used Foursquare technology. If you ordered food, you probably used Foursquare technology. And I've been here for about 4 years now. I've been very, very lucky in my career. I've gotten to run B2B teams, consumer teams. I've done everything from high-level branding and repositioning of companies into building growth teams. So prior to Foursquare, I worked for a company called Taluna, which is a consumer insights platform. Previous to that, I was at Prudential running the direct-to-consumer strategy. So a really fun, through-the-line type of marketing career for, I'd say, the past 20 years.
I love it. And it was so fun when we were talking before we clicked record. I was kind of nerding out because I was a huge fan of Foursquare back in the day. Me and my friends would compete to be the mayors of the local Panda Express and all that kind of stuff. I was obsessed with that idea and loved it when businesses had like custom rewards for those kinds of individuals. And we were just talking, it's like the perfect case study to prove out, hey, this technology has a lot of use cases, businesses, you should apply it. And so I think it's kind of not necessarily a pivot for a business, but it's such a cool use case for how a business should grow and it kind of expands. So I think that's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's no better way to say, hey, our technology works other than actually using your own technology.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Look at the millions of people that check in at their favorite places every single day that otherwise would not. And so I think it's really cool.
Exactly. And our CEO, Gary Little, tells the story. My husband used to be the mayor of Shake Shack, right when Shake Shack first came out. And there was their first store or restaurant was in Madison Square Park, and there used to be lines and people would wait hours and hours. So the amount of burgers he had to eat in order to be the mayor of Shake Shack at that time, I think has literally cut years off of his life. But I'm sure if you Google his name someplace, there's a picture of him shoving a burger into his mouth as mayor.
Oh, and I'm sure that's a badge of honor. Like that's LinkedIn title description worthy right there. I was the mayor of the first Shake Shack for sure.
Correct.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Michele, we're going to talk about how we can use content to enable our sales team today. And there's a lot of different roads and different avenues where we could take this conversation. But as we were talking, I kind of want to narrow it down to the kinds of content that our sales team actually needs. So when you're looking at it, how do you find the kinds of content that your sales team actually is going to use, that they actually need? How are you getting that feedback and those insights from the sales team, and how are you really aligned with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's two things to unpack in your question. The first is, how do you get the feedback about what's being used? I think there's 2 to 3 different ways. The first, obviously, is you need to be in lockstep with your CRO or your head of sales about what feedback the sales team is getting, setting up those communication channels to make sure the sales team is coming back to the marketing team saying, I used this pitch deck, I didn't use this pitch deck, or even looking at what actually went out the door is probably really, really important. If you put together materials and they're being edited to sort of understand that. So it's more of a heavy lift, but it's definitely the communication aspect is important. Are you meeting with your sales team on a weekly basis? Have you been talking with your CRO on a weekly basis? The second is also whether or not you can track that. Using tools to see what actually has gone out the door is better sometimes than having people come back and give you that type of information. Do you have metrics to say you've created pitch decks, they've gone out, etc.? And making sure have people downloaded it. You can get a whole bunch of metrics involved, which are very, very useful. But I also think if you take a step back and sort of understand what does the client want, and if you're really understanding your client needs, you'll be able to sort of ladder that up to what does the sales team need. And that was really looking at your go-to-market strategy first and foremost, if that makes sense.
I love it. I love it. So digging into the tactical side of things, because I love to give really tactical advice. What are some of the really productive channels that you've created to get that feedback? I mean, obviously, I feel like there's multiple layers. It's the leadership side. How are you connected with the CRO and the head of sales, things like that. But what other channels have you really set up to hear individual feedback from individuals on the sales team?
Yeah, there's two. One is the weekly meeting. Actually, now that I think about it, there's three. The first is we always listen to calls whenever anyone goes out and pitches. Either there's someone from the marketing team, usually it's the PMM team, that is involved in those calls. So we're listening about how someone is pitching. That's first and foremost. What's being used? How is it being? What objections are we hearing as well, which is really important. So if we're talking about a specific product that we just launched or a technology, what questions is the client asking? Where are they sort of not confused, but where are you seeing a little bit of pushback from the client if there's a specific area or talk track that the sales team is going through? So first is obviously listening to calls and understanding really what the client is asking. The second is, if you're not listening or on those calls, we set up a Slack channel, obviously with the sales team. It's probably the most used way that people are getting feedback. I think it actually was called like marketers on marketing, or the marketing sales team on marketing, where they can drop in things that they loved about the sales pitch, things that they're missing. And then there's the weekly one-on-ones that the PMM team joins. There's another added layer, which is, again, the one-to-one, where our creative team is actually going out and talking with the sales team about what's working and what's not working. So the channels we have obviously are listening to calls and going in or attending calls, either having a Slack channel or some type of one-to-one communication or one-to-many, and then setting up individual meetings or joining the sales team in order to get that feedback.
I love it. Those are incredible channels. Lots of cool things. I think one of my favorite things is the idea that you're finding all the questions that are being asked that people need to be able to answer, right? And content is a great mechanism for answering questions. And it's cool that you've created all the feedback loops. That's super powerful. So from everything you've found, what are the kinds of content that actually like move the needle for sales teams? Like what are they actually using? Because as marketers, we come up with these creative ideas and we want to do like things that push the envelope. But in my experience, it feels like everyone kind of comes back to a few different pieces of content they use over and over again. What have you found that's actually useful and used by your sales team?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you're thinking about how a client or how a customer is going to view your content or engage with your product, there usually is three or four different streams, or two or three different streams. The first is that you have to think through, and that goes back to your go-to-market strategy. Is someone using a product already and we're asking them to switch? That type of content that you create for someone who is looking to, sometimes we call it conquest. If you're looking to conquest, or if you're looking to ask a client to switch, it's going to be a different piece of content than if you're going out and talking to a brand new lead. And the brand new lead has there's two different aspects within the brand new lead. Is, do they know your company and use a product already and they don't use this particular product? Are you doing an upsell? Or are they completely new to the company? And you have to create content that speaks to those three journeys or those three buckets in order for it to be really effective. So if you are going to ask or have your sales team go out and talk to someone that's using a competitive product, and we're finding this with our latest launch of sales impact with attribution, those materials that we're using are going to be very, very different than if you are creating something for a prospect who's brand new to Foursquare or brand new to your company, and is not using a competitor's product. It is a different type of sell and a different type of learning experience for the clients if you are asking them to use a product that they've never used before. They also, on the client side, have their own stakeholders that they need to go in. So they will need to understand things like what your pricing is, obviously what your ROI is going to be, but they might need more education on the product itself. They might need to buy into the idea of the product. Whereas if you're thinking about someone who already is using a competitor, you're going to be going probably feature to feature in some aspects. Why does it make more sense to switch? Can you save them more money? They may not need a buy-in to the concept already. So you're going to start creating two or three different content funnels that speak to each of the mindsets of the customer that you're talking to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I love that. So when you are creating those different, I love how you call them different content funnels. If you, let's say, for example, you come out with a brand new feature or something like that, and okay, we need to create content to support this new feature set. Are you creating three different variations of the same piece of content? Or are you typically kind of following the funnel and it's more I create content in funnels as opposed to, more vertical based versus horizontal based when it comes to that? How do you kind of delineate there?
Yeah, it's really interesting because we keep the same funnel. So if we're thinking about there's one thing that we try to do, and that is we try to verticalize a lot of our content to speak to the person or the customer to make it as relevant to them as possible. Then we follow your normal content funnel. So if we're trying to get you, or we think that we have built a better mousetrap, we're going to make that content really relevant to your vertical, but we're still going to follow the same upper funnel, mid funnel, lower funnel type of strategy. If you already are using our products and we're trying to do an upsell, it's still probably we do less upper funnel because you already sort of know us, you have a brand affinity with us. We're focused more on objection handling, more down funnel. So it's not that we create different funnels, we follow the same type of awareness. We just put less emphasis on those that already know us, which makes a ton of sense, right? Like if you're already using Foursquare products, we don't have to necessarily do a lot of your thought leadership around the specific product, et cetera.
I love that. Okay. So it's more about the industry creates the funnel and everything's self-contained there. And depending on their experience, so if they're using a competitor or not or whatever, it's more about the content. Okay, they need more top of the funnel content in this industry as opposed to very bottom of the funnel because they're not familiar with it, things like that. So those different groups of people determines what layer of the funnel content they're kind of getting.
Correct. So as an example for top of the funnel for prospects, what works really well for us is analyst reports. So it may not be the report itself, but the messaging around if you use our attribution, you get 200 to 500% ROI back. That type of messaging and that content works really well for prospects who may just know Foursquare on the consumer side, aren't using us, but are really interested. If we're going to more of a someone who's already, let's say, knows us, and we're trying to get them to switch, those proof points are really, really helpful, obviously. But when you're talking to the sales team, they're going to ask us questions around methodology. They're going to ask us questions around pricing. So there are two very different types of content funnels. The messaging around what you put in what place, just different. It's very different.
And then when you look at those audiences, are you segmenting? Do you have specific fields like in the CRM that the sales team is kind of expected to fill out to say they're coming from such and such a competitor or they're new to the space or whatever? And does that kind of help inform some of the decisions about how much emphasis on certain kinds of content you're doing?
It's such a great question. I wish we were as automated as how you're laying it out. But honestly, it is old school. These people we're getting to, let me take a step back. We are getting to a place where it's going to be automated and we can go into our CRM. Right now, we have a very good sense of who is using our current competitors, who do we think is a new prospect, and we are creating really straight up FAQ documents, talking points for our sales team to use and our customer service team to use when talking with clients. We're also then taking long form content and breaking it down into the right piece of the funnel. So you can take something like an attribution buying guide, which is 20 pages, and suddenly you're creating little bite-sized snippets that the sales team can use in emails, that can be used on LinkedIn throughout different areas of the funnel.
I love that. Plus, I imagine this is true with your vertical based content strategy. I'm sure you know your industries well enough that like a specific vertical probably has a higher likelihood that they're coming from a competitor versus a brand new to the space. And so all of that can already be informed by simply knowing they're in this industry. Okay, that tells me a lot already. I'm guessing that's a big part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that is really important is to understand, are they coming from a competitor? Are they a brand new prospect? Are you upselling or are you cross-selling? Taking one piece of content, you don't have to create multiple pieces of content. Customize it for the vertical and then customize it for each of those three different buckets: new, conquesting, or upsell, cross-sell, and then sort of breaking it down throughout the funnel. Whether or not someone comes from a different industry could be an outlet. Oh, this person works for the government. We don't have deep penetration in the government. They're probably going to be a prospect. but there's different types of personalization tools, data enhancement that you can use that will also help with that. I think it's probably more important to know, take your content, make sure it's personalized for that specific industry, and sort of break it into those three buckets of they already use a competitor. Here's the type of content and messaging we need to use for them versus we're going to upsell, cross sell. Here's the other type of content that they can use.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to throw you like the ultimate curveball,
Ooh, love it.
and hopefully you're okay with that. When it comes to AI, and everyone's talking about AI and everyone's using it in different ways, shapes, and forms, when you have such a really cool organized system of content where you have verticals and different buckets and different stages, things like that, do you ever envision AI being able to take like a single piece of content and being able to change it depending on the different circumstances of that individual? Like, would you ever trust AI to say, okay, I can rewrite this for an industry? I can rewrite it based off of they're in this specific bucket of they're using a competitor, they're not using a competitor, it's a cross sell, upsell. Do you think AI is ever going to get us there? I'm curious if you feel like that's going to be the case, or if you feel like there's going to be a lot more involvement in it at the same time.
No, I hope it can get us there. And I hope my team is using AI in order to help some of the writing and that they're not doing it themselves. I think I don't feel confident right now to have automated AI. I might have made that up or I'm using the term incorrectly. Generative AI do it without any type of human oversight. I don't think it's there yet because there's nothing worse than getting a piece of content that is so obviously missing the mark about who you are, what you do. And the only way to really make sure that you're getting a real personalized experience right now is to have the human oversight of the AI. I hope it gets there. There
Yeah.
should be no reason to spend, hours customizing something if AI can do it for you.
Cool. I love that. Well, Michele, we have run out of time. We try to keep these episodes short and sweet and to the point. Thank you for giving us some really cool insights about how you're looking at content, how you bucket it, a lot of the cool different channels that you have incorporated. There's so many cool things. I love that. I think there's going to be a lot to take away from this episode. If anyone listening would love to connect with you and find you online, how and where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn as per most people. That would be the preferred method is LinkedIn for sure. Do not send me an email. It will go to spam whether or not I wanted to. So definitely LinkedIn.
Love it. And for anyone listening, we will link to Michele's profile in the show notes below. So look there and connect with her. Michele, again, thank you so much for the time and insights today.
Anytime.